Get in.
All right, here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody, Scott Burnside back for, I was going to say another edition of the Suitcase and The Scribe, of course, with Mike McKenna in St. Louis, but it's the finale of the 2021-22 season. And what a great way to kick off the final podcast of this season. So pleased to have Allain Roy. And I'm going to ask you, did I say that right, Allain? Because
that's pretty good. That's pretty good. It was a mixture of Canadian and American pronunciation. I like it because I do have dual citizenship, so it's perfect. Well,
I knew that. I did a little research, Allain, because I knew that you come out of a Canadian background, and I knew that there was a connection with Mike, goaltender, lived in St. Louis for a period of time. I assume if you didn't live with each other, you lived nearby, because that's a whole St. Louis thing.
Small town thing, exactly.
I know, it's great. But and so pleased to have you join us, and it's great. You're in the Kelowna airport. You've been an agent for, I think, just over 2 decades. So what are you doing in Kelowna? What's going on? Tell us all.
First of all, thanks for having me. And Mike and I go way back because I was his agent for many years. So, but he was an easy client. You know, in our business, you refer to guys that like high maintenance or low maintenance. He was more towards the low maintenance. He was good.
Appreciate
that. I'm in Kelowna. We are. I'm still in the middle of free agency, so on the phone a lot. But me and my team have development camps for some of our young clients and some of our pro clients throughout North America. So we usually start out in New Brunswick and work our way west with 5 different camps kind of throughout North America. Good time to see some of our clients. We get them specialized instruction on the ice. We do some seminars and stuff like social media training and stuff like being smart about your money and stuff about off-ice training. Now we're getting into diet and biometric analysis and biogenetic info and how to create your own data and own your own data. Our job is changing every day, so it's always interesting. It's fun, and for me, it's a good way to kind of get some face-to-face time with everybody in the off season. But yeah, it's a busy time because while that's going on, I usually have a phone stuck to my ear as I'm watching the guys skate, talking to teams. That's pretty much what every day is like. Yes.
It's amazing to think how much this has changed. You know, like when we first started kind of our journey together, like this was 2006 or so. So we're looking at the better part of 16, 17 years that, you know, being an agent and being an agent, you really weren't concerned about all these different aspects. And now you have to do those things. You have to train your players how to use social media, right? Like you have to make sure that they understand how to market themselves or brand themselves beyond even being a player. That's really impressed me how that has changed quite a bit. But I kind of wanted to dig right into the meat right now of what's going on in the hockey world. And we're 2 weeks into free agency. A lot of people would think, okay, you know, Al, your job's probably done, right? You know, first, second day of free agency, get those things done. That's not the case, is it? There's still plenty of moving parts going around.
This may be one of the oddest free agency periods I've seen. I mean, it's been weird and tight for 6 to 8 years, right? Pretty much since the new CBA and the 50-50 system that changed things quite a bit. And then we had the interview period. Now we got rid of the interview period. But usually like July 1 is the original date. This year moved to the 13th, but July 1 at noon, you saw these deals rifle through because people had pretty much kind of agreed to them before and they just filed them. That's what was going on. Now, what's happening is because a lot of the bottom end teams have decided not to get close to the cap. It's really sucked a lot of money out of the system, and it's crippled the system. You see some big names like Kadri and Klingberg and some of those guys have not signed yet. And I think everybody's kind of waiting for money to be moved. And it's really become a big part of our job, a big stressor for the players and the agents, because the same conversation, it's like Groundhog Day, same conversation every day. Yeah, we're trying to move money. Once we move money, we'll sign your guy. And what we've learned over the last few years, like the last 2 or 3 years, is that it's really hard to move money. And when it doesn't happen, guys get caught on the outside looking in. And that's what's happening right now. It's so it's very stressful for players and their families, very stressful for the agents. And on the team side, it's kind of stressful for the teams who are at the cap because they got to move money. to be compliant. And then the guys who have room are just sitting there hoping that the offer gets better day by day, and it probably will for a lot of them. But you do have some teams who are consciously creating their own budget, staying away from the cap and more towards the floor. And the guys who get squeezed are the middle guys. Those like $2 to $5 million guys, they're really getting squeezed. The top end guys are getting the money. The bottom end guys are going to get their league minimum to $1 million. But those guys in between, they're really paying the price. Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting, though, Allain, because you're coming off a deal that you just worked out with Jonas Siegenthaler, if I'm not mistaken, with the New Jersey Devils, a guy who really had a really impressive season, big guy. And I know from talking to Tom Fitzgerald in the past, the desire to make that back end in New Jersey a little bit bigger and a little bit more imposing. 5 years, $17 million. Maybe walk us through what's that like, because I assume for Jonas, that security and to find that kind of place in the NHL and have that security at that price point. I mean, it's got to be exciting for him, but maybe what's that process like? And at the end of it, what's it like for you and the client, and maybe for Tom in New Jersey as well?
Yeah, it's an interesting process, especially, a lot of factors go into this decision, right? Does the player like it with the team? Are they playing the right style? Is he tracking the right way? And with Jonas, it's interesting. He's Swiss. A lot of the Swiss guys like to play it safe. It's the nature. But also, he had kind of a rough go in Washington where he just couldn't get in the lineup. Not really because of how he played, but it was a stacked back end. There were no injuries. It was touch and go for a couple of years. Is he in the league? Is he not in the league? And then all of a sudden, that trade happens to New Jersey, and Lindy Ruff comes in, and he finds a happy place in that system, right? So he's playing well, killing penalties, playing more and more minutes. Then you get to that point where it's like, okay, well, they want to do an extension. Do we want to wait another year? And if you play those kind of minutes next year, you probably get more money, or do you want to know you're there, right? And it's interesting because I've got Nico Hischier there too, and they're best buddies and both Swiss. So, and Nico's got 6 years left on his deal, so it's like, it's kind of it was a good timing deal there. So then you get into, okay, you do your research, advanced stats. The Devils are owned by private equity guys, so they're big into the advanced stats also. Mm-hmm. So then it becomes a battle of, we have our advanced stats person that works for us, they have theirs, and it becomes, that kind of a battle. And then, okay, where is this going to go? And then you get into the conversation where you eventually end up trading some security for some cash. That's usually how it works out, right? And you get to a number where the player's like, okay, I think I'm comfortable with this. And the team's like, hey, we're not going to move anymore. And then it's like, okay, well, we do this now, or you wait a year and then we do it next summer. And if you play the same or better, you're probably going to get more money next summer. Or you can do it now knowing that you have the deal in the bank, right? And I think, going back to the conversation before, with only $1 million going into the cap this year, the cap went up by $1 million. And again, next summer, I think we're going to have a very similar summer. The off season is going to be very stressful for guys. You see a lot of guys who became UFAs thinking they were going to get a lot of big offers, not getting them. Extensions are likely going to be pretty popular. It's the nature of the beast at the moment. I do think after we get past next season, then I think things will open up a little bit and the cap should start going up again. But things are pretty clogged up here. We're still, the players are still paying back the COVID money to the owners, and that's causing a lot of stress to the system.
That was always my thought process. And obviously, working together like we did, as a number 3 goaltender, you're probably not going to have a lot of options, but I always thought that first one across the table made the most sense. That was the team that wanted me the most. And even if I remember having that conversation, even if the dollars weren't there, probably the opportunity was, so it definitely, Scott, it varies for the different player, where they're at the stage of their career and what they're looking for. But, as a goalie, again, like, things have changed a bit here, Al? Like, I remember thinking about this a week or two ago, and I think I even tweeted it, that it feels like to me the goalie market is getting to the point where just about everybody in the league is going to be making between $3 million and $6 million unless you're on an entry level contract. Like, why has the market driven towards that? Why are there not the outliers of goaltenders that are really making the big bucks? I mean, you've got basically three of them. You got Price, Vasilevsky, and then you've got Bob in Florida. They're the only guys. And I don't see those contracts being handed out again.
Yeah, the goalie market is it's almost like an outlier, right? Like, I don't know if you remember what year that was where Chicago and Philly went to the finals and both backups were playing. It was with Michael Leighton and the Finnish guy, right?
Antiniemi.
And
Antiniemi. 2010.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting old. That seemed like yesterday to me.
Lates was the number 3 goalie in Philly, you know, and he was almost there. Yeah.
But I don't know if you remember, right after that, you know, that summer, the goalie market almost kind of went in reverse, where people were like, well, those guys went to the finals and their backups played. We're not going to pay anybody. And it really affected the goalie market. And then, you know, then it went in reverse, right? Then you go through the next season, teams are like, oh, we gambled on the wrong side. Now we need to pay. And that's when you started seeing the deals like Bob and I mean, Vasilevsky probably deserves what he got paid, you know,
sure.
like but then the deals like Bob and
you
stuff,
had
right.
You had Rask and Rene, they were $7 million, right? They were in that wave of guys.
Yeah. And now it's become kind of in between those two, right? Teams are like, okay, we need 3 good goalies, not just 2, because guys are playing too much, especially the last 3 seasons because of the schedule changes. Yeah. Too many injuries. So you need 3 guys that can play, likely pay a 3rd guy a one way, which they would never do in the past. But now a lot of teams, I'd say half the teams are thinking that way. And if you spend $10 million or less on your goalies, you're in pretty good shape cap wise. Like, I think that's how it's viewed, right? If you're less than $10 million on all 3 of your goalies, I think you're in pretty good shape. And that's really become the mentality on the team side. Now, Mike, you and I feel the same way. The goalie is the most important player on the team.
That's right. Former goalies talking to one another here, Scott.
I know.
but I do think that the market will always keep ebbing and flowing that way. And then you look at what happened this summer, and there's this kind of a shortage of real number ones in the league. I think if you talk behind closed doors to all 32 GMs, you'd be surprised how many feel like they're uncomfortable with their starting goalie. And there's just not enough guys. So the other thing that needs to start happening is, you know, they need to probably start letting some of these younger goalies get a quicker look, you know, testing them more quickly at the NHL level, and you know, moving past certain guys. I mean, you got guys in their 40s still playing in the league. That's a concern. You know, like, it's a fast league. Like, and to me, like, if teams just don't want to move on from that because they're not comfortable with some of the young goalies out there, then I think that thought process has to change a little bit.
Yeah, I'm curious about. You know, we talk about the evolution of the business of being an agent and what it was like, 20 years ago when you started. And I'm curious about in these development camps, and how is your relationship with younger players that are coming to you and your organization for help and for representation, and I assume your relationship with the families as well. How is that different now than, say, 15 years ago, or when you first started, or maybe it's not different at all? But my sense is that's something that's vitally important if you're going to do this kind of work.
Yeah, it's very different. First of all, we'd be doing this interview on a rotary phone, and and you wouldn't be seeing me.
Yeah, sure.
But no, what's changed the most, and I've seen it a lot because I've been doing this 23 years. I would say the last 10 years plus, social media has created this "I want it now" type of mentality, not just for the kids, but for the parents too. This sense of entitlement, accomplishment at a very young age, which is crazy to me. But it's probably the part of the job I dislike the most is having those kind of conversations with young players and their families. And it's like, hey, well, I was the best player in Bantam. What are you going to do for me? It's like, well, yeah, everybody plays Bantam,
Congrats.
so talk to me in 3 years. But that has become prevalent. And it's a concern for sure because it's not tracking the right way. And I think with the advent of social media and I want it now and I better get it now kind of mentality, it blows me away sometimes when, some 16-year-old client will text me, and if I don't answer within 15 minutes, I get the 2 question marks, and I'm like, "Are you freaking kidding me?" Like, like, but that's the world we live in, right? And it's what I signed up for. So it's, it is what it is. But as a parent, as somebody who's been doing this for a long time, it's concerning, and I don't see it. I see more parents hurting more than helping, meaning that they kind of propagate that type of thought process where it should be like, hey, listen, like, you got to earn your way. Earning your way is something you have to educate kids on more and more. Where 15, 20 years ago, it was understood. You're playing hockey, you're accountable. People around you keep you accountable, and just keep your mouth shut and your ears open, and things are going to be okay. Now it's like you gotta say it over and over again.
So Mike, I want to follow up if I can.
Yeah.
So do you have to have the tough love conversations, not just or only with your hockey playing clients, but maybe with moms and dads and, extended family? Like, do you have to lay down the law?
You do. I mean, the helicopter parents usually end up, unless the player decides to kind of push them away. And I'm not saying, hey guys, like, cut off ties with your family, but tell them, hey, I'm an adult now. It's my life. I want to make my decisions. If that doesn't happen, I'd say 90% of the time, that's a lot of times what drives a career not to work out. The player or the client he'll be missing pieces to the overall deck of being a pro athlete, and character is a main one. And it's hard to build character if there's always somebody there picking up for you and making excuses for your mistakes and that kind of stuff, right? You need that adversity. You need to go through the tough times. You need people to support you, but you don't need people there to kind of cover for you. And that's very hard for a lot of parents to get through their mind. And sometimes it gets combative, right? They think you're trying to push their kid away from them when you're just trying to tell them, let your kid grow up, let your kid fail. I think a lot of sports parents really have a hard time letting your kids fail. But I look back at my kids and my career, and the stuff that happened to me when I failed is the stuff I'll never forget. The successes you kind of put behind you, and that's it. But the failure is where you grow. And people really have a hard time with that.
The reason that's happening is because parents are spending so much money now on their kids, and they feel like they're so invested in them, and we've spent tens of thousands of dollars on you, and at the core of it, you're still just trying to let your kid enjoy the game as much as you can. It's not about making it to the NHL for everybody, and it's perverted the whole process, man. Like Al, did my dad ever come up to you and ask you about my contract status or what we were going to do on the next contract?
Never.
Not once.
Never.
And
No.
I'm so thankful for that my parents let me guide my own shit, man. Like, they truly did. And I know that helped me in a lot of ways. You've given us a lot of time.
All he ever asked me was, when was the last time you got your teeth cleaned? Because he was my dentist. Hell of a dentist, by the way.
And I love that. That's perfect.
That was it.
You give us a lot of your time, and we appreciate it. We've seen agents make the transition into management now. We've seen Kent Hughes go in Montreal. I've seen Bill Zito go in Florida. First, is that something that interests you somewhere down the road? And two, do you think that this trend continues? What is it about being a player agent that lends itself to being a general manager? Obviously, you've got plenty of things to negotiate and discuss, but do you think that's something that's advantageous for people that do choose to move into that line of work?
I do. A lot of what we do on a daily basis. I manage a team of people and a couple hundred clients. So it's a lot like managing a team. We have the same discussions, just on the other side of the table. You have to be knowledgeable of the CBA, the cap system, how to market, all those kind of things. So it's a pretty easy transition. I would have interest, but years down the road. I've had several discussions in the last year and a half with teams, which I feel humbled that that they would approach me, but I'm not ready for that yet. I'm just doing a transition now with my company where we're marrying ourselves to a large family office to be able to offer all of the services in-house to our guys. This family office manages a lot of pro athletes, and so now we can do legal, accounting, money management, banking, and pretty much everything a player needs is going to be all under one roof, which I've been looking for a long time. because you do have to be a jack of all trades. You do have to have the prenup conversation, the estate planning conversation. You have to be all encompassing when a guy walks in the door, to be able to say, okay, we have all the tools here to protect you in your career. So let's talk about it. Because, and I think that's why teams are attracted to agents, because by trade, we have to kind of be well-rounded, because we're answering questions outside of hockey all the time for our clients. And then when you run a team, that usually starts happening too.
Well, we've got a frozen Scott Burnside, so I'm going to take it here. Al, you've given us so much information. And I want to point out to everybody that Harvard degree comes through really brightly, and that you did have your own playing career. And I know probably, Al, correct me if I'm wrong, the highlight of it was probably the time you spent in Roller Hockey International.
Yes, sir. The Vipers.
That's it. So thanks so much for spending some time with us today. I mean, your insight into the game's been huge. It's a side that people don't see a lot. And as we talked about, it's changed so much. I mean, from the day that we started working together to where it is now, it's amazing to hear that all that's offered, and really to see that agents aren't just out there to collect a check. You guys do look after the client in all manners, and you should, or else you're not going to be able to keep your job. So appreciate your time today.
No problem.
Thanks for coming to hang out with us. Good luck in Kelowna. Mike, as always, good call by you. No, I didn't want to put Allain on the spot, but did you ever, like, when you think of your relationships with him over the years, is there a moment where you're like, man, I'll never forget that, or that was a really cool part of that player agent relationship?
You know, I think a lot of it's kind of come after the fact. I've done some things afterwards, whether it was some media work or even doing a little bit of goalie coaching at some of his camps, that were valuable to me because it showed that he trusted me and thought highly of what I did. But like, we didn't have any real standout moments during my career because it was pretty straightforward. And that's what I liked about it, is that Al always was in touch. He was never overbearing. I really attempted to not do that. You know, he said I was low maintenance, which might surprise people nowadays. But
I think you're low maintenance, pal.
I appreciate that. But like, to me, it was his job and I trusted him, and I wasn't going to hire a guy or work with a guy. I don't think hire is even the right word for an agent. I think it's working together. I wasn't going to trust somebody that I didn't think had my best interest, you know? Yeah. And like I said, like, the first deal across the table was usually the best one, but we'd have several deals laid out. We'd talk to teams, and we'd kind of just, the week before free agency, work it out, man, you know, and we'd figure out which is the best place for me to be. And I'd value his opinion. And honestly, I don't think I ever butted heads with him on where that was, you know, and that's the trust factor. But not every player has that. Like, what he said about parents is so true, man. Like, I know one NHL goalie out there whose parents just straight up told an agent the guy's next contract should look like Carey Price's, you know, and this kid was like 22. And I'm just looking at this and thinking, like, first, why are the parents involved in the first place? But two, are you nuts? You know, and it's kind of the level that things have gotten to. So I always thought that being an agent would be fun. I still think I would enjoy it, but Scott, it's a ton of work, man. Like, yeah. You've come in contact with a lot of agents, spoken to them. Is there anybody in hockey that needs a bigger phone plan when we used to have minutes on our phone plans than a player agent?
Oh my gosh. And you know, Allain was talking about it, you know, he's got these camps. I mean, you know, think about the infrastructure of running 5 camps and the cost that goes into that. Now, you know, maybe that comes out of the percentage or, you know, whatever it is, but the planning, the costs, and then meanwhile it's free agency. So you're working out this 5-year, $17 million deal for Jonas Siegenthaler. And I got to tell you, the reviews on his evolution and his, you know, how much they love him in New Jersey. I mean, that's you know, talk about fit and how important that is. But yeah, no, it's a critical thing. And then, you know, again, the business is, you know, it's cutthroat. People are constantly, you know, there's always a very fluid part of the agent business, you know, we see, and I think my sense of it happens more frequently now, players going from one agent to another. And, you know, that the competitive nature of the business, I won't even mention any of the names, but I've been out socially and talking to an agent, and another agent has come in and there was some poaching of a client. And this agent was like, I gotta go. We can't be in the same room.
No kidding.
Like it was, well, and it's a livelihood thing, right? I mean, not to go too far down the rabbit hole on it. I remember talking to Emily Castonguay, who of course is now the assistant GM in Vancouver, but was Alexis Lafreniere's agent when he was taken number 1 overall by the Rangers a couple of years ago. And I just remember her telling me the story about, and she belonged to a small boutique agency based in Montreal. And she said, it's not really a week that goes by that I don't hear that some other agent has called Alexi's family or, basically trying to swoop up her client. Sure. I said, I would lose my mind. And she's like, I can only control what I can control. And that means I got to be the best agent for Alexi and his family. I can't worry about the other people. But honestly, when it makes me mad even thinking about it, but it just happens all the time.
But what Emily said there that you just repeated is the most important aspect. All she could do, or he or whoever it may be in this business, is to be the best agent available for that client. You can't send your thugs over to beat the guy up for trying to poach your player. You can't have a mob mentality and go bust some kneecaps, dude. Like,
good story if it happens that way. But anyway,
it'd be great. It'd be nothing but tabloid fodder. But that's the overarching principle here, is that you need to be the best at what you do and be the best option for that player. Yeah. And I think you see it now, like, people do switch agents a decent amount, and for various reasons. Some players are just straight up selfish and want the biggest deal they can get. Yeah. But other players just don't feel like that agent's responded to them. I hear that a lot. And that's the one thing that, Al always responded. Like how he said, though, about the 16-year-old kids with 2 question marks. That's hilarious that they want it instantly.
Crazy too.
It's so funny. But it is real that he always responded, man. And that's all you ask for. All you can ask for is the player agent to respond. And I thought that his comments about Kadri and Klingberg were really interesting, Scott.
Yeah.
I've written about them a little bit at Daily Faceoff. We've talked about it. You kind of get the sense that they overplayed the market a little bit here. And now what's going to happen for these 2 players? There's no way, Scott, that they're going to end up getting the money that they thought, unless somehow a team magically moves out cash against the salary cap. And as Al said, that's not easy, man.
Well, see, I wondered about, because I really enjoyed your piece the other day on looking at some of the teams that have been very quiet this offseason. New York Islanders are one of them. And, is that where something breaks? And then you see, a deal with term and dollar that you would, either for John Klingberg or Nazem Kadri, that you would go, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So whatever the number in term is, 7 times 7 or whatever it turns out to be, maybe that happens. But my guess is, and I think you're absolutely right on this, is that at this stage, do both those players or one of them, are they sitting with their representatives, their agents, saying, all right, we're not seeing what I want. I'm willing to gamble. We saw this with Taylor Hall a couple of years ago. He signed the 1-year deal in Buffalo. I'll take 1 year, good team or a team on the rise at a high end, $7 or $8 million, whatever it takes. And you bank on yourself to get through to next year. I know we're not expecting a huge cap rise next summer, but as Alain mentioned, maybe in 2 years, maybe it's now you're just like, we'll take a 1-year deal and we're going to revisit this next summer and maybe we'll have a different strategy. I don't know. It's hard. And it's, what do I know? But, I'm sure for both Nazem Kadri and John Klingberg, maybe they imagined that they would have had dollar in term and security and not be worrying about it now. And maybe it's not worth the stress to go back into a 1-year deal. But I would think that it might be, if you felt that you're still not getting paid what you're worth, and you say, I'm gonna take another swing at it next summer.
It wouldn't be me. I'm very Swiss, even though I'm American as it gets. I tell you what, I would have taken term over dollars any day, because you know why? I know how to invest, man. And you give me term, maybe give me a salary, give me a bonus like in the first year or 2 that I can bank and ride that. That's the direction I'd go. I was very risk averse, but that's not everybody. Some people love to gamble. I don't love to gamble. 1-year deals, you're gambling. You better perform. We've seen it go both directions, and I don't know, man. It'll be interesting to see those 2.
Right? Yeah. Like, what if Nazem Kadri gets hurt in the playoffs?
Yeah.
What if what if that happens in October, or what if it happens in March, right? Like any of those things that you can't plan for that then make it impossible to come back to the table next summer and saying, well, I'd like 7 times 9.
Imagine missing out on $40 million due to an injury.
Yeah,
Imagine it, right? Like generational wealth. Anyway, I don't know, man. We were talking before this, Scott, and I think you're right. I think we do need to talk about our friends that have helped me out immensely this week. You got it?
I got you. We were talking about, you got to rely on people. And as always, we here at Daily Faceoff and at the Suitcase and The Scribe rely on DoorDash, the proud sponsor of the Nation Network of podcasts, restaurants, and more delivered right to your door. And it's been a long season. I feel like DoorDash has been right there with us.
Yes, they've been very good to us. They were very needed when we got home from my family and I went on a 2-week odyssey up to New York State and Portland, Maine, where I played 3 seasons in Portland, Maine. And I just absolutely love that place, man. But when we got home, we needed some help. We had a day or two of DoorDash being delivered. So thanks to them.
All right. So now one of the things, we talked about the teams that you wrote about that weren't all that active. What's a team that you are looking at? We're heading into, notwithstanding John Klingberg and Nazem Kadri, but we're heading into the sort of the dog days of the summer. What's a team that you're like, you know what? That's an interesting off season for Team A. Is there a team that you've been like, I wonder how that's going to work out?
The Islanders have done nothing, Scott. Like Lou has done nothing. Like they don't even have Dobson signed to his new deal yet. Like something's got to go there. Like I'm thinking like August 6th in the middle of this, there's going to be a massive trade and signing a Kadri, or just like, I feel like a classic Lou play where he's been just, waiting in the weeds here. And then all of a sudden the Viper strikes and it's like classic Lou, because they've done nothing other than fire Barry Trotz and bring in Lane Lambert in my eyes. And man, that team has got to get some speed and creativity. They got to unlock Matt Barzal, man. Like, so that's the club that I see that really something has to happen there, because they're just going to be mediocre again if they don't. And I think honestly, Winnipeg's in the same boat. Like, and I don't know where you go if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff. I mean, they have a tough time with free agents. They could hardly find a coach. Like, it's a tough spot, but if it's a tough spot, then just do something, like trotting out the same lineup next year, basically with some tweaks it's not going to accomplish anything. Like, wouldn't you rather go down in a blaze of glory trying something than just, being conservative again? So those are the two that I think I kind of got an eye on. But like, I mean, Scott, I think you've pointed out, we've talked about some teams that have made some significant moves and maybe it's kind of flown under the radar, and Pittsburgh's one of them, man. Like, I never thought that Mike Matheson would be on the move. I was surprised by that. And Marino, 2 defensemen, Scott. What do you make of this, bringing in Ty Smith and Jeff Petry?
Well, I was just looking at the Penguins, their entire lineup. And you know what? Like, I think you and I talked about it. Like, what's the option if you don't want to ante up with Kris Letang and Evgeny Malkin? What are you going to do? We see what Vincent Trocheck gets in New York on the term and the dollar. So Ron Hextall, not only does he not pivot away from those cornerstone players, that back end has been, it's been transmogrified. This is not a young team. I will just say this. This is not a young Penguin team. But you know what? I just love how Ron Hextall has, Jon Marino's, I thought he was a future top 4 guy there for years. He goes to New Jersey. Ty Smith, who I thought might have been a top 4 guy in New Jersey for
similar
years, he comes back, and you're right, that Matheson, now you bring in Jeff Petry. Now Petry's, a couple, like, listen, it didn't all go according to plan in Montreal, but I think we can say that about the entire team there. But I just think Jeff Petry is an interesting add. He's 34 years old, right-hand shot guy. Now he slides in behind Kris Letang. You forget, people may have forgotten, you've signed Jan Ruda, a guy that people might have overlooked in Tampa. Again, 31 years old. That back end is experienced, rock solid. You've got, Petry, I think, still has lots to give.
Mhm.
I like Matheson in Montreal. I think that fits what
Hometown boy.
Yeah, I think that's a great fit there. But I do look at that Penguin team and I'm like, they just loaded up again and said, all right, I know, like, the window was, maybe it's closed already. Maybe they're banging their head against the closed window, but that team is in it to win it. And I just think the back end is better than it was. And they're throwing the dice again. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, at least they're trying. That's my point, man. Like, I look at Winnipeg and it's like, I don't think you're trying. And I had Philadelphia in my piece this week where the messaging from ownership was, man, you got a blank check, go for it. Let's make this happen. And then it just turned out to be really pale and conservative, and I'll tell you this much. Here's my sticking point with Philly. They needed to do whatever they could to move out money because Johnny Gaudreau would have gone there in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And you had access to the best free agent player who would transform your team. And you couldn't make it happen. And everybody knew that Philly was trying to move money. I get that, man. But look at the Blue Jackets right now. Patrick Laine couldn't put his signature on that piece of paper fast enough and give glowing comments about how excited he was to play with Johnny Gaudreau. That's how a big time player like that can change your franchise. So those are my words of wisdom there. And from a person who's never been a manager.
I get it every day. And I know, listen, Chuck Fletcher's, he takes a bit of a beating there for the reasons that you just
And I love Chuck Fletcher, man. I do. He's a super nice guy and very intelligent man.
Yep. And I got to tell you, I feel every single day it seems like, oh, and by the way, yes, the Flyers didn't sign Johnny Gaudreau, but also now they're losing another player for 6 months. And, Ryan Ellis, uncertain when he can come back and play. Joel Farabee out until after the start of the season. Bobby Brink, we had after his great college career ended, he ended up in Philly. There's Bobby Brink, another guy that I think, he could have penciled in somewhere in the top 9 and right forward, right? Anyway, he's out 5 months. Who knows when he comes back. It's just they've had some bad luck there, I guess, is what I'm saying. Yes, in Philly. So
they have.
That's my thinking. So yeah,
I don't like beating up on people, but it's just they're going to be mediocre forever unless you make some big swings. There's no way around that to me. Yeah.
All right. What else we got here? We're getting towards the final podcast of the season. Always, I will say this now to soppy or whatever. I have enjoyed every episode. It's just been outstanding. So
it's been fun, and we've had really varied guests. And to me, that's the fun. That's what makes it interesting. This week grabbing an agent and doing some people from different looks. Like there's a lot of different elements and angles to the sport that sometimes people don't think of. So that part's been great. It's been fun to look into and learn more about your work and what you do and what you're passionate about and what makes you tick. And, even this week, man, like your writing and the forcefulness of it, which is needed on the Hockey Canada situation and how they've been covering up sexual assaults now for however long, paying people off, like bungling the process. Like, Scott, it's not just alarming, man. It's something that I think was almost like an open secret at times and nobody did anything to act on it, man. Like, do you see this as finally being the watershed moment? Because you've dug deep on Hockey Canada. You know a lot about this process and the hearings. Where do you see it going?
Yeah, well, and there are lots of reporters who've done a lot much heavier lifting than I've done. Rick Westhead at TSN and Katie Strang at Kenny Campbell. Longtime hockey writers, done a lot of work on this. There have been a lot of people who have done, some very hard looks at what has gone on with Hockey Canada. And literally, as we're taping this, another day of testimony for leaders of the national hockey body in Ottawa with before members of Parliament answering very difficult questions. And to your question on the watershed, I hope it is. I honestly don't get the sense, though, and maybe this will change. I'm not sure that the leaders at Hockey Canada really understand how broken the organization is, and the level of mistrust from the men. For all Canadians, like I should, but my sense is the level of mistrust is enormous in Canada, and it's goes from sponsors, obviously, who pulled out of the World Juniors, Scotiabank and Tim Hortons and Canadian Tire, institutions in and of themselves who are backing away from Hockey Canada. The fact that some of the registration, that parents have paid for their kids to be part of Hockey Canada went to pay victims of sexual assault in out of court settlements. And it's discouraging. And I think, you asked watershed moment. Yes, but there are so many hard questions about what next and who leads, who makes the decision on who leads this group. Do you have a couple people in mind you named a few in your piece you thought would be good to be able to at least be there in an advisory role? There's people out there that can help.
Yeah, I think it's important to bring in voices, who represent a viewpoint that, has been ignored or trodden on. I mean, how shocking is this, that the Canadian national women's team, with some of the greatest women players in the world, sent out a release on the eve of this week's testimony that demanding Hockey Canada be transparent, that they tell the truth, and demanding that women, that the women's team, but in general, I think broader scope, that women have a seat at the table on what Hockey Canada looks like moving forward.
How has there not been a woman on that board?
But there are a couple of women
are with a bigger voice, at least. How?
Well, I think it speaks to an organization that has been a closed group. I think that's how you get this culture. And it's not just this 2008 horrific sexual assault in London, Ontario, after a Hockey Canada gala. In recent days, we've got news that has come mostly from Rick Westhead and his reporting, but Hockey Canada put out basically a preemptive press release saying that there is evidence of a gang sexual assault in the 2002-2003 World Junior team in Halifax. Police have opened an investigation into that incident. London police are reinvestigating the 2018 incident. This has been an organization that has created this culture where players felt enabled and emboldened to act in outrageous and if it's not criminal, then borderline criminal manner, and have created a dynamic of don't ask, don't tell, where women were not treated with respect and women were not treated as equals, and they felt emboldened in part because of the system established by Hockey Canada. So, man, there's a ton of work, but it's really important, I think, to find people who are smart, who will ask hard questions, present different viewpoints, whether it's from I talked to a woman, Andrea Gunrash from the Canadian Women's Foundation. They got some Scotiabank sponsorship money, and they certainly need lots of support. But the victims need to have a voice there. Women need to have a voice there. All kinds of underserved groups in the hockey community should have a say in what Hockey Canada looks like moving forward, but it needs to be taken down. And the change, I think, has to start at the top. There was a call for leadership to step down earlier today. Apparently, leaders aren't prepared to go. So we'll see. There's a lot of work left to be done, Mike, and it's shocking, but maybe this is what it takes to make it right.
Hopefully. I hope so. Subject flip. Let's get back to the NHL real quick here before we depart for the rest of the year until we get back to training camp towards September. I'm just going to ask you to make one prediction. Any prediction you want that in the next month or so before we reconvene, you think might happen. And you can take this any direction you want to go.
That's That's a good one. I wish I had a really good answer off the top of my head. But I'm going to go back to Nassim Kadri and John Klingberg.
Mm-hmm.
And I think here's my prediction. It's a bit wishy-washy because I'm making it up as I go. I think both those guys sign, and I think at least one of them signs with a team that will make us arch our eyebrows in the same manner we did when Johnny Gaudreau signed in Columbus.
I like it. I like that.
It's kind of weird. It's kind of wishy-washy. That's kind of a wimpy one. Well, okay.
No, that's not.
I want you won't hurt my feelings. You have a much better one. What do you have?
I like that. I'm going to say the Detroit Red Wings make playoffs.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And so like this is way out in the future here, but I think that what the Yzer plan and what it's done, I think in the next month or so, you're really going to see that team kind of start to galvanize before training camp, and you're going to find out that this club's going to be for real quicker than you think. Okay. Yeah. That's a wild prediction for the future of the year. Yeah, if we go for the next month here, I look at teams that I had from my list. Like I think that those teams aren't done. I really believe the Islanders are going to make something happen here. I really believe that. And I also think the St. Louis Blues aren't done. Those are my two teams that I've got an eye on that I think could actually make something happen before training camp starts. So those are my two predictions. I'm not sure what they'll be, but if I had to put money on it, it's the Islanders.
Okay, just before we go, because I'm curious about we talk a lot about the Edmonton Oilers, and there's been lots of there. When Jesse Puljujarvi signs the 1-year deal, and now the question is, he signs, does he stay there? That's the other thing I'm curious. Do you think Puljujarvi stays with the Oilers? I'm just looking now at their roster here. Does he stay there, or is this a point where, okay, now he's under contract, now he becomes an asset that's controllable, and so the Oilers could move him because there's still, Yamamoto's still an RFA still out there. Ryan McLeod's still an RFA. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious because he really is such a lightning rod for so many Oiler fans, right? I remember doing this piece on Puljujarvi early in the season. And I talked to Kenny Holland and, talked about how he's so happy he didn't trade him and he was playing with Connor McDavid and lighting it up. Now there's lots of ebbs and flows to his game. I get it. But do you think he stays there? Like, is he a guy a month from now? Is he still an Oiler?
At the start of the year, we were talking about who's going to score more, Laine or Puljujarvi. I think it's smart biz by Ken Holland to get him under contract because now it's a controllable asset, obviously. And at that dollar figure, his contract came in at $3 million, I want to say. That's manageable, right? You can make that contract go away if you need to, if you can also get value out of that contract. Like, I think what it turns into is if a team comes to Edmonton with enough of an offer, they'd be happy to move on from him. And if nobody steps up to the plate, well, you can eat that cap hit for another year. And you hope that he still turns into a player that you thought he might be. So it's a hedge to me, Scott. And I think a hedge on a player that you still don't know what he is a smart thing to do. So I'm not sure how it's going to play out. I would lean towards he's probably going to still be an Edmonton Oiler in training camp. But by the end of the year, I'm not sure about that.
No, that's good stuff. All right, my friend. Listen, it's been a pleasure every single week. You bring it, no questions. So thanks for being such a great co-podcaster. That's what
teammate, brother. A good teammate. And you have as well, Scott. You're always prepared. And of course, Liam, who's helping us out behind the scenes, and everybody at Daily Faceoff, really appreciate it. Everybody's listeing. You don't have to listen to us bums up here talking, and you do, and we appreciate that.
Good for Liam. Yes.
That's
well
it.
done. All right. Well, we'll catch
you
on
training camp.